Hello, I'm Andrew Schmidt. I'm here in the healthcare section of the Ingram Micro Business Transformation Center. And today I've got the honor of speaking with Rainier Varilla, who is a principal security architect with IBM. Welcome, Rainier.
Thank you for inviting me. Appreciate it.
So we got a lot that we'd like to get to cover today. So let me get started here. Let's just kind of do a little bit of background. So really, what are the key trends you're seeing in the healthcare space, and how is IBM helping to address them?
Sure, good question. So, as you know, or maybe not, there have been several high-profile cyber attacks in the healthcare industry. And although healthcare cyber attacks may not always be on the same scale as other industries, the sensitive nature of the work in the healthcare industry means that cyber attackers can be much more damaging in that industry. So the healthcare industry continues, interestingly enough, to be the most targeted sector for cyber attacks. In fact, in 2020, 79% of all the reported data breaches were in the healthcare sector. So given the amount of personal information that can be found on several hospitals and healthcare corporations, it's unsurprisingly that the majority of the hackers target this data with their attacks. So there are healthcare organizations that are currently and will be dealing with pressing business issues on many fronts. One of them, of course, is ensuring patient privacy, safety, and security. Just the volume of patient medical records have tremendously increased in the past few years and have become a clear target for cyber criminals because they are considered easy marks, right? Also, because of the pandemic in the last couple of years, mobile connectivity and telemedicine is on the rise, and the usage are increasing attack footprints for the cyber attackers. So healthcare providers are using telemedicine, they're using wearables, remote health monitoring devices and sensors to improve care, to help reduce costs, and meet regulatory compliance. So the space is really insufficient from a cybersecurity perspective for those IoT and medical devices that make them vulnerable to cyber attacks, as happened during the WannaCry crisis. Second, quality of patient care and cost pressures are actually driving cloud adoption and IT spending. As the healthcare companies focus on lowering their costs and improving the quality of care, they are adopting a secure cloud platform, and cloud-enabled solution allows those providers to shift the location of care from chronic healthcare conditions from hospital clinics to the home, creating those cost efficiencies. And then, of course, what we're also seeing is organizations are struggling to maintain regulatory compliance, right? So there is a strong need for solutions to achieve that compliance, and there is a serious business risk of violation if they don't meet those compliances. And then lastly, and you wouldn't think this to be an issue, but securing medical images, right? At the same time, the volume of medical images that are vulnerable to theft is increasing rapidly. In addition to traditional radiology images, other disciplines such as pathology and ophthalmologies are using imaging tools. Even more vulnerable are the tablets and other mobile devices that allow practitioners to capture those patient images in the offices. So what is IBM doing about this, and how are they addressing these? Well, first of all, IBM's point of view is that market-leading organizations need to keep individuals at the center of their data practices. So the data privacy program must be guided by the rights of those individuals, demonstrating transparency at every phase of that process, and aligning what is best for the individuals to what is best for the business, protects the privacy across the business and the culture. It also helps build the trust with clients, employers, partners, vendors, and also allows organizations to differentiate completely and grow their business. So we typically advise our customers that they need to transform their security program to help transform their business, and they need to rethink that approach. So many of our clients are looking to adopt a zero trust framework for building a security program based on least privilege. privilege. And the simplest way to describe zero trust is to trust no one and verify everyone. It's accessing the information and resources that are necessary for its legitimate purpose, right? And IBM has announced recently a new suite of XDR offerings under the QRadar brand called QRadar XDR that runs on the Cloud Pak for Security platform. So QRadar XDR helps security analysts break down the silos between the proliferation of point products in the industry, providing a comprehensive visibility across the security tools, security teams, with the insight that they need to act quickly on. And then lastly, IBM is currently negotiating with a company called reaqta, and their offering will become part of this portfolio, adding expanded native XDR capabilities to IBM's security portfolio already.
One of the things that we look at is obviously a lot of change over the last couple of years. I look at it in a lot of spaces that we're just, a lot of these organizations are finally doing a lot of the stuff we talked about. Healthcare is kind of interesting because I think they've done probably 10, 15 years worth of growth in terms of advancement of technology adoption and utilization in 2 years. Obviously, you talked a lot about the challenges that come along with that, but that's got to change the approach for a partner who would be interested in selling into a healthcare customer. So really, what are some of the changes that have happened selling into that healthcare space?
Sure. Well, first of all, we need to put ourselves in their shoes, right, and just understand what their challenges are in the last 2 years. And the challenges in the last 2 years have been the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic. So patient care has been challenging as most businesses transition to remote work out of necessity, really. And we've seen an increase in telemedicine where physicians and nurses contact our patients on remote devices. And this in itself introduces a number of risks that need to be addressed by IT organizations and business partners. So, for example, the growing complexity in keeping patient data safe of the cyber threat landscape increasing in size and sophistication. We're continuing seeing migration to the cloud, as I mentioned earlier, that has expanded the attack surface and created the need for more security controls. And then companies are actually reacting by purchasing point solutions to meet a distinct need, but isolated data provides limited value in an incomplete picture of threats. So data becomes silos from networks, from hosts, and from application. And of course, companies are also dealing with the evolutionary or evolving regulatory landscape, right, where there are unique workloads and data needs for compliance, security, and the geography that they're currently in. Lastly, we're also seeing technology generation and skills gaps where organizations struggle and attract and retain those skilled security staff for their security operations centers. So when you're selling into a healthcare organization, you need to take all those challenges to mind when developing a solution that addresses and increases their posture, security posture in the organization.
So let's ask a couple of product-specific questions. You talked about QRadar XDR built on top of the Cloud Pak for Security. Internally, we know that as CP4S just because it's a lot easier to say. Sure. But how does that really fit into the solution, and how does that enhance your security posture? I know a lot of these organizations, look at compliancy as the benchmark they got to reach. They'll do what they need to do to be compliant, but based on what you've talked about, from the increasing amount of attacks, the higher all the regulatory changes, is being compliant enough?
Right. No, another good question. So CP4S platform provides a solution under the umbrella called QRadar XDR, as I mentioned earlier, that comes with a set of extended detection and response capability that run on an open security platform. So enterprises can connect their tools that they've already had invested in, automate their SOC environment from a manual to a more automated process, and then free up time for what matters most for the IT and the SOC organization, right? So delivered on that open security platform, QRadar XDR helps the SOC teams, first of all, gain enhanced insights while improving detection for threats. So QRadar XDR helps teams cut through the noise of too many alerts from disparate tools by connecting the additional telemetry with your data using an open security platform. And QRadar XDR correlates related alerts and prioritizes them for you so your team can detect without having alert fatigue. What happened with alert fatigue, you end up eventually ignoring it or just totally bypassing that alert and going on to something else. So, and then second, you want to be able to act quickly by automating threat intelligence investigations and accelerate threat hunting, right? So QRadar XDR uses AI to automate case investigations and correlate that data, enabling your analysts to efficiently triage and allowing more time for strategic analysis and threat hunting. So one of the other things that Cloud Pak for Security, or CP4S, will provide is a threat timeline. It also provides MITRE attack mapping and contextual threat intelligence that can help improve the prioritization of the events and offenses that they're seeing, the root cause analysis, and then the response of it. And then lastly, we want to be able to leverage an organization's existing security tools. And what I mean by that is that it's not always the best option to rip and replace in order to secure your environment and meet the compliance that you're required to meet, right? So you don't have to get rid of your existing tools and buy all new from a vendor. Give your security teams the ability to connect a full range of tools, the data and intel feeds to modernize your stock and address the needs of your team. So QRadar XDR enables you to use the security tools of your choice.
So that actually kind of leads well into the next question. In a lot of cases, a partner who might be working with that healthcare customer might have been brought in to either evaluate or propose a point solution. So what would be the kind of probing questions that partner really should be asking in those kind of customer engagements to really determine whether or not it's a good fit for Cloud Pak for Security?
So one of the things I like to do is, play the devil's advocate, right, for a customer. Or to a customer. So I'd like to ask several questions, and I'll kind of explain why on each of these questions. First question is, how do you achieve unified insights across data silos in security products from multiple vendors, such as multiple SIEM solutions, multiple endpoint products, et cetera? The reason I asked that question is because all these point products, it's very difficult for a SOC analyst to triage quickly and provide some actionable insight, right? So that CP4S allows you to triage quickly and correlate all those alerts from multiple data sources onto a single UI. Second question is, how do you automate manual and repetitive manual tasks, right? A lot of SOC environments have manual processes in place that could easily be automated to free up some time for the SOC analyst to do some more of the important work that they have in their responsibilities. It'll also help reduce that organization's RTO, recovery time objectives, and RPO, recovery point objectives, by automating those manual processes that take hours down to minutes or even seconds. The third question I would ask is, are your analysts struggling with screen switching and moving between tools? Again, this goes back to no correlation between the tools or unified dashboard to allow them to triage an event effectively and then execute on some actionable insights from that. A fourth question I would ask is, do you have a security platform that lets you leverage cloud native security without vendor lock-in? course, this question is toward reducing vendor lock-in and allows your organization to pivot to reduce costs. It allows them that flexibility to make a decision and pivot based on cost as well as based on need. And then I would also ask, with employees working from home more, are you struggling with cloud or endpoint visibility? This question is really about the attack surface that is at risk. So the attack surfaces just got more complicated. So how do you address this with more people working from home or working remotely? And then lastly, do you perform behavioral analytics at the user and role levels? And is it integrated with your SIM? Obviously, we want to be able to find out if they understand that some of their attacks that they're experiencing may be internal attacks. So we want to be able to monitor and get a baseline of each user that are in the network and traversing through the network.
So as we close this out, one of the things we like to do is we really want to hear from the people who are really involved with these products and find out what they think about them from the standpoint of, either personally, what do you think is like one of the most valuable features, or what's the biggest benefit that your customers see?
Sure. I think from a SOC analyst perspective, I don't know what I would do without this particular feature in Cloud Pak for Security, and it's called the Threat Investigator, which has been automatically in the background mining your connected data sources for the related incidents of compromises, or IOCs, and behavioral patterns. So it provides that complete attack view of a threat by mapping its behavior in your environment, correlating it with MITRE's TTP database. It's also building attack graphs for you. And those are needed to understand how the threat landed and expanded in your company, right? So the challenges for SOC analysts are, it's hard to build, and it takes time for your SOC team to wade through all the data from all the tools and the logs that it's being ingested. So with QRadar XDR, which is part of our Cloud Pak for Security platform, automatically builds that attack graph for you using that artificial intelligence that's built in across all of your data and your feeds. The attack graphs will show multiple columns that represents different assets that matches a simplified network graph that's also produced in QRadar as part of Cloud Pak for Security that shows the machines that were involved in an attack. And by viewing that attack graph, you can follow the behavior of a threat as it laterally moves across your network, and it provides that easy to follow timeline view of the attack. This will pretty much help me as an analyst and help any SOC analyst to better understand the entire scope of the attack and the assets affected, even outside of the endpoint, while at the same time it's presenting them with a manageable number of items rather than a full list of all the events that's happened.
So one last thing for you. You've said behaviors a lot. I know in cybersecurity that means some things. I've got some background, or well, not really, but when I think about behaviors, I think of it more like criminal investigation kind of a thing. And when you put that in the context of what CP4S does, one of the things that comes to mind to me is, what's the likelihood if we've got Cloud Pak for Security in place, or better yet, the full QRadar XDR suite, of really being able to surface an issue that, the individual actions may not have triggered any alerts, but the continual behavior, this happens here, that does that over there, so none of them actually set off any flags by themselves. But when you can look at that whole data, you know that you've got an incident.
And that's the beauty of Cloud Pak for Security, first of all, is the ability, and it's actually our bread and butter, is to correlate all the different events, security events that are happening, and correlate them together as an offense, right? So it takes all the data point that it's ingesting and looks at it to see if there's any patterns that are similar to each other and are related to each other, and using AI and machine learning can, for a very good percentage, identify who the person was, what server was being attacked, what IP address is being affected. So from a behavioral perspective, all these little behavioral things that it sees, it correlates them into an offense. And no other solution does that without some additional third-party solution to help that along.
Well, thank you very much for your time today, Rainier. And if any of our listeners have any more questions about Clawback for Security or the larger QRadar XDR suite, please reach out to us at the BTC, and we'll put you in touch with our IBM software team. Thank you very much.